There is a plant growing in silence along highways, behind abandoned barns, beside rusted fences, and in the cracks of forgotten lots across North America and Europe. Most people pass it without a glance. Some mistake it for an overgrown weed. A few pull it from gardens in irritation. Yet for more than 2,000 years, this plant traveled through empires, crossed battlefields, filled apothecary jars, and soothed the restless and the wounded. It stood in the shadow of opium, survived the age of morphine, and faded quietly as modern pharmaceuticals rose. Not because it was outlawed, not because it was banned, but because the world changed. This is the story of wild lettuce, and this is Lost Nature Vault. The archive opens in ancient Egypt around 1550 BCE. Inside what we now call the Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest surviving medical texts, scribes describe remedies derived from plants that produced a milky sap used for pain and sleep. In the Mediterranean world centuries later, the Greek physician Dioscorides recorded a plant he called Lactuca virosa, a bitter lettuce whose latex could calm coughs and induce rest. The name reveals its character. Lactuca refers to milk. Virosa suggests strength or potency. Cut its stem and white sap from the wound. That sap, when dried, becomes a brownish substance historically known as lactucarium. Ancient physicians sometimes referred to it as letus opium, not because it was identical to opium, but because it produced mild, sedative, and analgesic effects. The plant itself grows tall, sometimes over 6 feet. Its leaves are jagged, often with small spines along the central vein. Yellow flowers crown its top in late summer. It thrives in disturbed soil roadsides, riverbanks, open fields, places shaped by human movement. Romans used preparations of wild lettuce for insomnia and anxiety. Medieval herbalists described it as cooling and calming. By the 18th and 19th centuries, European and American physicians prepared tinctures and extracts of lactucarium for cough suppression and mild pain. It appeared in pharmacopeias and medical texts. In the 19th century United States, wild lettuce extracts were sometimes used when stronger narcotics were unavailable or undesirable. During the American Civil War, medical supplies were often inconsistent. Surgeons relied on whatever they could obtain. While morphine and opium were widely used, plant substitutes were occasionally explored when shortages occurred. Wild lettuce was among the botanicals documented in medical literature of that era. However, it was generally understood to be milder than opiates. As medicine advanced in the late 1800s, doctors began recognizing the dangers of opioid dependence. The invention of the hypodermic syringe increased the potency and risk of narcotic delivery. At the same time, researchers in Europe studied alternatives. Some 19th century medical journals discussed lactucarium as less potent than opium, but potentially useful in mild cases of insomnia or cough. Still, its effects were variable. Potency depended on harvest timing, preparation methods, and plant species. This variability would become one of its greatest limitations. By the early 20th century, wild lettuce remained listed in some pharmacological references. It was available in lozenges, tinctures, and syrups. But the world of medicine was transforming. The late 19th and early 20th centuries marked the beginning of synthetic drug development. Aspirin was synthesized in 1899. Barbiturates followed in the early 1900s. These compounds offered something new: consistent dosing, measurable chemistry, predictable effects. Unlike plant extracts, synthetic drugs could be standardized batch after batch. As regulatory frameworks strengthened in the 20th century, especially in the United States after the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 and later amendments, medicines increasingly required evidence of safety, purity, and consistent manufacturing. Plant preparations that varied in strength became harder to justify in clinical settings. Research later identified compounds in wild lettuce such as lacticin and lactuca. Modern laboratory studies suggest these compounds may interact with the nervous system, possibly influencing pain perception and acting on certain receptors. Some animal studies have shown mild analgesic or sedative effects at specific doses. However, these effects are significantly weaker than opioid medications. They do not replace morphine in surgical settings. They are not a cure, and human clinical trials remain limited. By the mid-20th century, wild lettuce gradually disappeared from mainstream pharmacopeias, not through dramatic prohibition, but through obsolescence. It was overshadowed by drugs that were easier to standardize, mass-produce, patent, and distribute globally. Pharmaceutical companies invested in synthetic chemistry because it allowed precise molecular control. Government supported strict regulation to prevent contamination and false claims. Hospitals demanded reliable dosing. In this environment, a roadside plant with variable potency struggled to compete. Meanwhile, the modern pain management industry expanded rapidly. Non-steroidal, anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen and naproxen became widely available. Acetaminophen gained popularity for its pain-relieving and fever-reducing properties. Opioids continued to be prescribed for severe pain, bringing both relief and serious public health challenges. It is important to understand this clearly. Wild lettuce was not erased by secret decree. It was displaced by industrial, regulatory, and scientific shifts. Medicine moved toward laboratory precision. Plants that could not meet those new standards without costly research fell away. Today, interest in herbal medicine is researchers are re-examining traditional plants for bioactive compounds. Studies continue on lacticin and lactucarium. To understand their pharmacology, some findings suggest possible mild analgesic and sedative properties, but more rigorous human trials are needed. Herbal supplement companies now sell wild lettuce tinctures and capsules. Because it is classified as a dietary supplement rather than a pharmaceutical drug in many regions, oversight differs from prescription medications. This creates variability in product quality. Concentrations of active compounds can differ dramatically between brands. Misidentification of plant species can occur. Some products may contain minimal active material. Others may be contaminated. For this reason, medical professionals advise caution. Natural does not automatically mean safe. Even mild sedatives can interact with medications or cause side effects. Individuals considering herbal remedies should consult qualified healthcare providers, especially if they have underlying conditions or take other drugs. Wild lettuce still grows freely in parts of North America, Europe, and Western Asia. Foragers identify it by its tall stalk, small yellow flowers, and milky latex. But accurate identification requires expertise. Several related species resemble one another. Mistakes in wild plant harvesting can carry risks. The broader lesson of wild lettuce is not about suppression. It is about transition. Human medicine has always evolved. Willow bark gave rise to aspirin. Foxglove led to digitalis. Opium poppies yielded morphine. Many modern drugs originated from plants, then were isolated, refined, and standardized. Wild lettuce represents a different path, a plant with mild properties that remained largely in its natural state and therefore lost prominence when precision became the new standard. Yet its story reminds us of something powerful. Knowledge moves in cycles. What is common becomes forgotten. What is forgotten becomes rediscovered. Fields once dismissed as folklore are now studied under microscopes. Laboratories search forests for new compounds. Roughly a quarter of modern pharmaceuticals are still derived from plant sources or inspired by plant chemistry. Nature remains a vast biochemical library. In the quiet corners where wild lettuce grows, there is no conspiracy, only continuity. The plant does not demand belief. It does not promise miracles. It offers what it has always offered: mild, calming compounds shaped by evolution. For some in history, that was enough. For modern medicine, it was not strong enough to compete. The tension between traditional knowledge and industrial medicine continues today. Chronic pain affects millions worldwide. Researchers seek non-addictive alternatives. Interest grows in cannabinoids, plant alkaloids, and novel receptor pathways. Science advances, not by rejecting the past, but by testing it carefully, rigorously. Wild lettuce stands as a reminder that many plants once valued can fade from memory when systems change. Its story is not one of erasure, but of shifting priorities: efficacy, consistency, regulation, scalability. In earlier centuries, variability was accepted. In modern hospitals, variability is risk. That difference shaped its fate. Still, along roadsides and riverbanks, the tall stalk rises each summer. Yellow blossoms open to the sun, break the stem, and white latex appears, just as it did in ancient Egypt, just as it did in Rome, just as it did in 19th century apothecaries. Whether it becomes part of the future depends not on nostalgia, but on research. If future clinical trials demonstrate safe and meaningful benefit, it may return in standardized form. If not, it will remain part of herbal, traditional, but limited. The vault of nature is not a conspiracy archive. It is a living library. Some volumes become bestsellers. Others gather dust. But none are truly erased. They wait for rediscovery, for skepticism, for curiosity, for evidence. Wild lettuce is one of those volumes. Not a miracle, not a myth, a plant with history, chemistry, and questions still unanswered. And in Lost Nature Vault, that is where we leave it, not buried, not glorified, but understood.